All right, the microphone is on. I'll just double check with our folks watching on live stream. Can you hear me? I'm hoping. I know there's about a 10-second delay. Oh wow, we don't want that. Let's mute that. So is that coming through you? Gotcha. Gotcha. Barbecue. Cool. Yep. Sweet. All right. Grab a seat if you want, folks. Do whatever you want. Make yourselves comfortable. Cool. Sort of. No, you're just going to stare at me awkwardly. Great. Cool. I'll talk to the camera then. That's fine. First and foremost, thanks everyone for joining. For those of you that don't know me, those of you joining online, all those sort of things, my name's Josh Richards. I lead a cave exploration group here in South Australia called the Soggy Wombats. And for those who weren't paying attention to a TV about a month ago, I was the Australian that was invited to try and support the Laos Cave Rescue to try and rescue 5/7 guys stuck in a mine about a month ago. So you can mute that. Thanks, Daz. I will say for all of you, please don't. For you in the room and also everyone online, please don't stare at me in terror. This is very much a presentation in development. This happened like 5-6 weeks ago. I am still very much processing what happened. I don't have a good sense of what people are interested in out of this. So I'm going to throw up a whole bunch of different things about what happened in Laos. If you've got questions, please interrupt me. If you want me to talk about a specific thing, ask questions. Same online as well. If there's something you want me to cover, please ask it. I will do my best to pay attention to you folks online as well. I've got my keyboard down here. Throw questions at me. I'll do my best. We might have to come back to it at the end, but this is very much a discussion. This is very much a thing because I don't know how this presentation is going to go, and I'll probably miss and skip things and probably muck things up. So anyway, first and foremost, I have a question for all of you here and everyone online as well. If the presentation is going to kick off for me, how would you respond to a message like that? So for a little bit of context, this is a Facebook message that I got from Miko Pasi about 6 weeks ago. I was in far north Western Australia at the time, and I was doing a presentation. I was doing a keynote speech for the West Australian Tourism Council, and I'd stepped off stage to find this. A little bit of context, I suppose, is that I'd been paying attention to what Miko had been doing. So Miko is a Finnish cave explorer based in Thailand. Has been running cave diving operations there for years and years. Was involved in the Thai cave rescue in 2018. World-renowned diver, amazing dude generally, and myself, Viv, who we've got in the room here as well, and Will Passos, the three of us were diving with Miko back in January. We're exploring the Boya mines in Thailand. Got to know Miko quite well. We're keeping track of what Miko was doing. He had been in Laos about a month earlier doing a whole bunch of exploration and training for different cave students. And it was one of his cave students that had reached out to say, hey, we've got a bunch of guys who are stuck in a cave. Can you help? So Miko, Norrising Palasing, Benz, as we know him, came across as well, and the pair of them, along with a guy by the name of Beer, drove across from Thailand, got themselves into Laos and started searching. They searched for 5 days, and on the 5th day, Miko and Benz were ready to push into what they suspected would be the 5th chamber through a dive, quite a horrendous dive. It was the last place that they knew where they might potentially find these guys that were missing. I saw that he was doing it. I sent Miko a quick message, just commenting on one of his reels saying, stay safe. They still hadn't found anyone at this stage. They were still searching. These guys were missing. And this is what they were searching through. So this is a quick video that Miko basically filmed on a 360 camera. These are the kind of conditions that we were seeing online. A lot of this stuff was being shared quite regularly. It obviously looks horrendous. My biggest concern looking at a lot of this was the walls looked soft. There were hard rocks pushing down, but there's a lot of brown, there's a lot of clay in that roof as well. And that was the biggest concern I saw very early on, that this was basically diving in coffee, and there were real concerns that the roof would collapse. This incident started because a series of guys went in illegally into a mine to start mining it, and there was a landslide inside. So rock collapse is what started this entire incident in the first place. So that was the genuine concern that we all had.
So Josh, at that point, did Miko have cylinders with him or not?
No. So in that there, he's literally just pushing through. A lot of the...
he doesn't know what he's going to find.
At this stage, no. So these guys, they're geared up, they're ready to go. They are bringing gear in, so they're being supported by the Thai Cave Rescue folks, Laos Cave Rescue folks as well. But no one knows what they're dealing with at this stage. This is not a complex system. This is literally squeezing through tiny, tiny little holes and dragging cylinders behind. I've had people ask me, did I wear a dry suit? Now, Miko's in a dry suit here. You can see how much he's struggling. I took a wetsuit. I was told before I went by Miko, don't bring fins, don't bring line, don't bring a backup mask, literally as little as possible. Don't bring a harness. So we were essentially tying ropes around our hips and then around the valve to drag that through as well. So like when we talk about it being tight, that's what we're talking about. And that's why he's struggling the way that he is there. So when I got the message, had just stepped off stage after delivering the closing keynote for the West Australian Tourism Council. I'd been up there for a few days. I was talking about the Mars One project that I used to be involved with. I was talking about risk management, talking about all sorts of different things. I'd sent Miko a message just before I went on stage saying, hey, good luck. Stepped off stage to find the message that you saw just before. My response to Miko was, I can be there anytime. I was well aware of where I was and how much travel was going to be involved in order to try and get to Vientiane Tang in Laos. But as soon as I could be there, I was going to be there. So at this stage, Miko didn't know if they had found anyone. They were still searching. So this was a preemptive, hey, if we find these guys, we're going to get you on a plane and we're going to get you out here as fast as possible, because basically you're small enough to squeeze into the places that we need you to squeeze into. So I was standing by. When I got the message, I was standing next to the Channel 7 anchor, Noel Brunning, for country Channel 7 News in WA. And it's actually Noel who coordinated a lot of my logistics in the end. Channel 7 ended up really stepping up and helping considerably when I got to Adelaide. They essentially picked me up from the airport, raced me back to where my dive gear was, and then raced me back again. They wanted an exclusive, they wanted an interview, all that sort of stuff. That's fine. I didn't care as long as they got me to my dive gear and back to the airport as fast as possible to be there. So I think we have a little video of, yeah. So like I said, I started up in Carnarvon, got the first plane that we could possibly get. But like I said, we were already heading to the airport. I was in the same car with Noel, back to Perth, overnight in Perth, raced across to Adelaide. Channel 7 picked me up, raced me down, picked up my gear, raced back to the airport, out to Singapore, overnight in Singapore, which was pretty horrendous. Quick flight to Bangkok, and then straight to Vientiane in Laos. So it was a race. At the same time, while I've got this up, we had guys coming in from Indonesia, we had guys coming in from Japan, we had a team coming in from all around Southeast Asia. And it was a mad dash basically for all of us to try and get there at the same time. So quick little happy snaps. So this is me in Singapore airport, a vending machine for fish balls. Mm-hmm. Not that fussed about fish balls. However, it was the one space that I could find in the terminal that I was in that was away from the wall. So I actually slept behind the fishbowl machine because there were no couches in the terminal that I was in, and I didn't have enough time to go and stay somewhere else that would have been more comfortable. So I found a nice little warm spot behind the fishbowl machine. This is coming into Bangkok the next morning. This is Google Translate. I don't know if you folks online can read that and all, but this is Google Translate. we weren't expecting any English support when we landed in Laos. There were maybe a couple of folks around, so I did a quick translation. Hello, I'm an Australian cave diver invited by Lao government to help rescue the miners trapped in Jiambong. I have a letter of invitation on this phone for diplomatic visa entry. Can I please show you the letter? Immigration officials often get funny about you having your phone, but this is the only way that we had to communicate. As it was, we had support who turned up, literally met me at the gate, walked me through the diplomatic visa, they issued it, and we were on the way straight away. Because we went straight from the terminal to a military helicopter. The military airport is the other side of the Vientiane International Airport, so they drove us straight around and into one of these old Russian helicopters. And I think there's a little bit of footage, loaded us up. It happened that the 5 international divers that were being brought in pretty much all turned up at the same time. We all landed within about 45 minutes of each other. So it was fairly easy to coordinate. This is the nice way to get to Long Tien, which is where essentially we were based out of the incident. It was about a 45-minute helicopter ride. On the return trip, it was about an 8-hour drive. So this is the way to go if you can. If you trust that it's not going to fall out of the sky, this is the way to do it. And obviously, landing in a remote village in central Laos. Literally just landing on a street. Long Tien was known as a bit of a ghost city during the Vietnam War. It's actually where the CIA was based out of initially while they were supporting the Vietnam War. So it was supposedly a city. It was hidden on maps, all sorts of different things. But it's now quite a central sort of center for this particular region. The incident site that we're in, well, I'll show you how we got there. But like I said, load up in the back of the helicopter. I throw this photo in, because it's a bit of fun and because, at this point we were fairly excited. The terror and all that sort of stuff came later, but we're all fairly excited. For a lot of these guys, the first time they've been in a helicopter, certainly the first time they've been in a military helicopter. Got this idiot on the right-hand side, but going left to right, we've got Beer here. Beer supports a lot of the guys in Thailand. He's an amazing instructor based out of Thailand. Robin Cuesta, who's based out of Sulawesi, who I'd been diving with in September last year. Odita, who is based in Indonesia and supports Robin quite a bit and knows a lot of these guys quite well. And Yoshitaka, who I had been diving with 2 weeks earlier because we'd been in Akiyoshidai exploring the caves in central Japan. He had essentially invited Will Passos and myself to come over and try and produce some 3D models of the caves that we're in. So it had been all of about 12 days between saying goodbye to Yoshi in Japan and then catching up with him again in Laos for this incident. So 10-minute drive from Long Tien to base camp. This blue line, if you look on Google Maps, this is just jungle. They carved out a road in less than 3 days, and they carved it out of the side of a mountain. The videos and the footage I'm going to show you doesn't show you how steep it is. It was unbelievable. I've described it to a couple of other people, but there were points on that climb where you could reach out and touch the ground in front of you. We're not talking about a bit of a hike. We're talking about a scramble, and a lot of the guys were sliding down to get back off the mountain, sliding back down. So this is 800 meters. This blue line is about 800 meters. It would generally take most of the group about an hour to cover that ground coming in. And they weren't carrying anything. There was literally just them and maybe a little backpack that they had to where the incident site itself was. So just double checking online. We've got a few orders for 1 sausage and bread and onions. That audio is good. Excellent. All right. So to try and describe how steep this was, we've obviously got a digger here. That digger's got its arm extended. It's using the weight of the bucket to try and lean itself into the mountain because otherwise it would tip backwards. You'll also notice that, I think if we play that again, you've got me, obviously back here, Robin, Yoshi, and Nico, all deciding this is too risky, riding on the back of this thing, riding up the side of the mountain. Meanwhile, I think we've got Benz, Odita, and Mr. Lee, who decided, nah, I don't want to walk. I'm going to ride up this thing. Honestly, I think this was probably the most dangerous thing that any of us did the entire week that we were there. So it was genuinely scary. I won't show you a video. Once we got to the top, it was much easier to come back down again. Again, this is incredibly steep. This is Robin wandering down the start of the slope down. You literally just slid. Like there was this very quickly turned to just pure mud, and you just slid down the side of the mountain for about 150, 200 meters. This is on the first day, and that's the mine entrance right there. So they're trying to get some ventilation in through there, trying to get air circulating. We had major concerns around sodium cyanide poisoning some of the gas chambers that we were in, build up of carbon dioxide, build up of all sorts of different gases. So trying to ventilate this was a major concern. So this was the most information that we had before we went in. So this is a side view of essentially trying to show the depth changes. So we've got the mine entrance up here. This all looks relatively open. I can guarantee you it's not. I'll show you some video in a minute that it's not, but it was showing the areas that you might be able to get to, where there might be air that you could get to. Probably the most important and most difficult thing to see, this blue section just through here is what we referred to as crawl space 1, or going from sump 1 to sump 2. And you'll notice that there's sections here that go straight up. They become really important later on in about 4 or 5 days' time. But this section through here was arguably the single worst part of the actual cave itself. So the very first thing that Miko asked all of the divers once we arrived to do was basically get in, get our gear on, and just go through this first section. Don't worry about going through all the rest of this stuff. This dark blue is underwater. This is the part where essentially the 5 were found there. But sections of this are submerged all the way through. But we weren't really concerned about this stuff. Only maybe 1 or 2 of us were going to be going through this submerged section. The part that we were really concerned about was this just here. And I'll show you a little bit of what that was like. So some of you might have seen me share this online, but I'll give you a bit of a breakdown on it. This is just inside the entrance. So this is literally crawled down out of the jungle, down through a few rocks, into the first crawl space. And it'll pause in a second and we'll get a view down. So that's what I'm looking for. So there's about 25 centimeters of clearance between there and there. There's about 30 centimeters of clearance between there. This is about a it's about a 6-inch hose once it's full of water. These are all power and communication cables, and essentially the only way to get down through this thing was to lay yourself out fully, grab, and then try and pull yourself through and push with your toes at the same time, because there wasn't enough space for you to let it crawl through or do anything else. You were basically using all the cabling, all of the hoses to pull yourself through. I've seen a few comments about, being concerned about people getting lost, and, got to make sure that you follow the line, cave divers following the line. You couldn't get lost in here. There wasn't enough space. Like, there was a junction, there was one junction further ahead, and we just needed to basically remember to go left. If you went right, I'll show you a map in a little bit, but if you went right, you came to a pond where there was a huge amount of water coming in from the side of the mountain, and you knew you'd gone the wrong way, so you went the other way. You couldn't get lost in here. It was too small, too tight. So this is going to be difficult. We arrived on the Friday. We got in at about, I think we'd landed at about 1:30, 2 o'clock. We got to the, in the afternoon, we got to the entranceway at about 3:30, 4 o'clock. The video that I just showed you there would have been taken probably about 4:30, 5 o'clock, somewhere in there. While I was filming that, Miko and Benz were already in the cave. They'd already gone through. It was about 350 meters from the entrance to chamber 5, where the 5 guys were stuck. And it would take roughly an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what gear you were carrying, to cover those 350 meters because it was so small. They were ahead of us. The other challenge with this, and this is where communication became really essential, if you went into a crawl space and someone else entered a crawl space from the other side, you're both stuck because you couldn't reverse. So you would need someone else behind you to pull your legs out and pull you back out because you couldn't back up. So being able to communicate and being able to say, hey, you know, you guys are going in, you guys are coming out, was a major concern. Add in that very few of the folks on site spoke English. Most of them spoke Lao or Thai. Lao and Thai are relatively similar, but I don't speak a word of either. Most of the people there, most of the divers who were there didn't speak a word of either. So very reliant on folks like Ben's to try and coordinate, because he could speak both, to try and coordinate a lot of this. There was also a lot of people on site, a lot of people doing things that we weren't necessarily aware of, or even really sure what or why they were there. So I can tell you, looking at this image, this photo is a photo that I took stepping back, I suppose, from the mine entrance. The mine entrance is just down over here. Stepping back, this was taken after we'd gotten word that Miko had actually pulled one of these guys out, that he managed to rescue one of them, pulled them through a 20-meter restriction, had basically done a soldier's 5, teaching this guy how to breathe from a regulator, and then tucked him up between his legs. Benz came up and tucked his head between the other guy's legs, and as a little train, they worked their way out through this restriction while the guy's using scuba equipment for the first time in his life. We'll circle back. There's a little detail there, but we'll circle back to that. What I want to point out with this is that there are a whole lot of people here, but most importantly, we've got one of our Thai cave rescue guys just down here, right near the cave entrance. We've got another Thai cave rescue guy here standing by with a survival blanket, and we've got the paramedic standing by in the medical team. Most of the other people were there to support, to take photos, to do all those sort of other things. There were a lot of people on site creating a lot of noise, a lot of garbage, a lot of chaos. But you really had to pick out the folks who were doing the things that we needed them to do. So figuring that out took a while. I really struggled with that, especially when you've got quite a number of people who are dressed up in kind of medical garb, but you recognise that it's actually the guy that's wearing the hoodie who's the actual trained medical personnel there. Medical personnel was one of the biggest challenges we had on site. So that paramedic was the most highly qualified person, medically qualified person on site. The next was Yoshitaka, who'd spent a couple of years at medical school. The third most experienced person there was me, because I trained as a combat medic 15, 20 years ago. So a little bit scary to think that you're the third most medically trained person on site, and you haven't touched anything medical for a very long time. But anyway, this photo was taken just before the first guy was brought out, which was pretty extraordinary. I think I've got a little bit of video of him. Yeah. So because of the Wi-Fi, because of the setup that we had through the mine, we knew this was happening. There's videos you can find online of the first sort of breath that this guy took once they got him out. But as I said, so he's just stepped on a root. He's got bare feet. He stepped on a root, and that's why he's called out. But huge number of people supporting, watching, and recording. Huge amount of video being recorded throughout the entire exercise. So I'll cut that one off. What's more interesting for me is about 30 minutes later, Miko and Benz came out. And I don't think folks had realised that Miko was out. They did realise that Benz was out. And this was one of the language barriers that we had. Ben's spoke the language, spoke Lao, so he obviously had a much better connection with all the folks that were there. We might have been brought in as specialist divers, but at the end of the day, this all came down to communication, all came down to understanding where people were, what the plan was. And so having someone like Ben's there really made the difference. This is probably my favorite photo from the entire experience. Miko, you saw the video of Miko wandering out just then. He literally takes his helmet off, looks around, and finds the first guy that he's just pulled out and goes straight over the medical tent. He is absolutely covered in mud. It was the only thing he cared about. Like, he just went straight to it. This guy was cleaned up. He'd had half an hour to sort of catch up a little bit, recover a bit. They're very malnourished. These guys were down there. It had reached the point where they were starting to eat little bits and pieces of wood that they'd found from tools that had been left behind before. So they're not in good shape, but he's smiling. They're warming him up. They're looking after him. And yeah, I suppose this is a testament to Miko, that couldn't speak the language, didn't understand what the dude was saying, went straight over to him and checked in on him. He'd literally just saved this guy's life. So I love this photo. Let me go back. I love this photo. It also really pisses me off. I tore strips off Miko after this. Once everything had calmed down, once everyone had sort of stepped back, Miko had had a chance to recover and all that sort of stuff, I ripped into him because bringing this guy out was the single most dangerous thing that I had ever seen done. They literally took someone who didn't know how to use scuba, jammed a regulator in his mouth, tucked his head between Miko's legs, and Ben's came up behind this other guy's legs, and they formed a train and squeezed through a lethal restriction. If this guy had panicked, they'd both be dead. All three of them would be dead. Miko only made this decision because he'd been pushing nonstop for 7 days. He had a double eye infection at the time because we're diving through contaminated water. He was losing sight of the risks. We were starting to see the risks compound every single step. And this moment of bringing this guy out was remarkable and amazing and a miracle and all those sort of things, and also arguably the riskiest thing that anyone did throughout the entire thing. So yeah, I laid into Miko afterwards and said, if you weren't so tired, if you hadn't been pushing as hard as you had, if you weren't as sick as you were, if you weren't as compromised in your decision-making process, you would not have done what you did tonight. I thought it was dangerous. The other thing that hasn't been talked about very much, especially in the media, is this is not the first guy we tried to pull out. They tried to bring someone else out, and the guy had a panic attack underwater, and they had to put him back on. So the reason why I have the photo of the spoon is because I was the diver that was going back in the next morning, and I was going back in to assess their well-being, and essentially the spoon was jammed up my wetsuit leg. Most of you in this room know, a lot of you online may not, but I obviously have a bit of a reputation as a bit of an underwater digger. Soggy Wombats draws its name from essentially me and one of my old dive buddies spending a lot of time underwater with hammers, chisels, saws, all those sort of fun things. And when we work underwater using those tools, our seals slip. So you end up soggy, or your undergarments wind up soggy. Wombats are also nocturnal digging animals. It seemed like a nice combination, soggy wombats. That's where the name came from. I had been brought in to do exactly that in this cave. My job was essentially to go through, check the well-being of these guys, deliver supplies, deliver water, energy gels, all those bits and pieces. And then on my way out, pull out my little spoon from inside my wetsuit and basically dig open the entrance. What had happened the night before was a genuine miracle. We had all discussed that we were not going to have 4 more miracles. Someone was going to die. Several of them were probably going to die. A diver was probably going to die. So we needed to mitigate those risks as best we could. The best way, far and away the best way that we knew right from the start, the best way to mitigate all the risk was to pump all the water out. And that's what we've been begging to do right from the start. So On the Saturday morning, rescued the first guy on the Friday night. On the Saturday morning, 2 things happened. I was gearing up with my little spoon to dig this stuff out. I was going to go in, assess these guys. The guy who'd gotten in the water and had the panic attack, Nico and I were having a discussion about what I would potentially have to do with his body, because the expectation was that he'd have died overnight from hypothermia. So having that discussion, what we're going to need to deal with that, and then try and open up the tunnel as best I could using my little soup spoon. I think I've got it here actually for you online. But it is just literally it's an Asian soup spoon. It's all we had. It's all that I could slip up my wetsuit. We didn't have many things that were metal that we could use as tools to dig. So that was the best that I had. The other thing that changed that morning, for nearly a week, Mr. Lee, who is an amazing Chinese engineer, works in oil and gas, had been leading the pumping operation. And when we talk about pumps, we're not talking about big, massive, we're talking about sump pumps. These things are dirty. They were being wired in with 120 volts by hand. So it was too dangerous to actually be in the cave while these pumps were running because the water was electrified. The most powerful pump naturally had been taken to sump 4 to try and clear that sump that was blocking our way onto chamber 5 to where the guys were. But it's not where the water was coming in. And Mr. Lee identified very early on that that most powerful pump needed to be moved. They were going to bring it out. We were hoping that they were going to bring it out of the cave anyway. So it would make sense. Let's bring it from sump 4 up to sump 3 where the water's pouring in. Fought tooth and nail with the Thai and Lao cave rescue folks, and eventually this morning they relented. They moved that pump up to sump 3. We were running it. As I said, I was in my wetsuit. I had my spoon jammed up my wetsuit leg, having a discussion with Miko about what I'd have to do with this guy's body. The guy had gotten wet the night before. When all of a sudden we heard shouts behind us. They got 4 out. Pumps did the job. So the water level had been sucked down enough because it had been draining from that earlier sump. It had stopped flowing into sump 4. That was the concern. And it had meant that it had drawn the water level down enough. It had run for 5 or 6 hours. No one had any idea these guys were coming out because there's no one in the cave. There's no communications. There's no nothing. There's no one in the cave because it's too dangerous while the pumps are running. So we had no idea they were coming out. The moment the water level dropped low enough in chamber 5 that they could see there was a way through, they ducked themselves under, they squeezed through, and they crawled out on their own. And we had no clue that they were coming out whatsoever. Like I said, we were about 10 minutes away from shutting the pumps down, and I was heading in with Ben's when these guys popped out on their own. So I've been in situations, especially with the military previously, where if you stuff this up, people are going to die. I've never experienced a situation where I'm being asked to do something and then all of a sudden I'm being asked to do something that will save people and suddenly they save themselves. I've never had a situation where like all of a sudden out of the blue, it's like, oh no, they're fine now. Like it's always been, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, or you find the information out suddenly. Not all of a sudden they just pop out and they're like, no, they're perfectly fine. So I still don't really know how to process. I'm so grateful I didn't have to dive. The risks involved with it were just absolutely unhinged. So 2 hours after the 4 guys came out on their own, the rains followed with, we had 35 millimeters of water in about an hour. And that's just the start of it. And this is where the roads start to wash away. So I'll play that again. Some of you in the room might recognise the voice on the phone.
Talking to me.
Probably not. We've been speaking to Richard Harris throughout the whole thing. I spoke to Harry, I messaged Harry the very night that I was leaving Australia, leaving Perth actually. I made 3 phone calls, didn't get through to Harry, did get through to my mum, and did get through to DFAT to make sure the Department of Home Affairs were aware that I was about to fly into a foreign country and do all of this sort of stuff. Got a message back from Harry later on, gave me some great advice on how to manage what we were about to go into. But again, we were short on medical expertise. Now, the reality is Harry potentially would have been too big to get into Chamber 5, but we would at least have had a fully trained doctor on site. We didn't have any of that. So realistically, we were just very, very lucky that the water level could drop enough for these guys to get out before things got really, really bad. So, but at this stage, we're still chatting to Harry because there's still discussions about, you know, these 2 other guys. Where are these 2 other guys? Yeah. Now, the 5 that came out didn't get a lot of information out of the first one. The 4 who came out provided a lot of information about what they knew of the cave from the hospital. Now, Benz went in, chatted to them, had a long discussion, and they essentially drew us this map. So down here, you can see the entranceway. This is crawl space 1, that space that I showed you before, probably the worst of the lot. This is the junction that I mentioned. That's the pond. And the pond becomes a bit more important in a day's time. But essentially, quite a lot of the Thai and Lao rescuers, cave rescuers, had built a dam. There was water that was coming in through the mountain and feeding into this pond. And essentially, most of the water that was flowing through was coming through this one source. And so they were building a dam to try and block it off as much as possible. All of this was sumpy. And then Chamber 5 here is where the 5 guys were on the beach. And essentially, they proposed the idea. They didn't really have anything to back it up with, but they said there might be underneath the beach another even smaller slot, smaller than anything anyone had been through before. But there was villagers' suspicion that it would connect to a series of chambers and then potentially quite a large chamber. And they drew these 2 little characters up the top here. No one had any real evidence for this. It was all very sketchy. This is literally the best map that we had to work from. As I said, 300 meters to get to there. And the suspicion was there was another 200 plus meters to get to that. So it's just the ice machine. We do things fancy here at the Happy. So
I'll recording this really quickly because there's a lot of people asking for messages and I don't have time to keep track of all of it. So I'm going to record this really quickly and just provide a bit of an update. Hi, I'm Josh Richards. I am here at the mine site in Laos. We've just hiked in and currently there's a caving team in there at the moment. We've heard the request that we need diver support. It sounds like potentially the flooding, the rainfall from yesterday has pushed the water line back up. Having a map from the miners who were rescued yesterday, we now know that there's a passage beyond. It sounds like it's even tighter and more unpleasant than what Nico and Benz have been diving through to previously. So we're potentially going to be heading in at some stage to try and support and try and search for these 2 missing two missing miners. From what we know, there is a significant air pocket that is considerably further on, another 100 meters or so through fairly lethal passage. That the only place they could still be would be there. So we are potentially going to be pushing through to try and provide support and see if we can search the remaining tunnel.
So that's the next morning. I was scared. I was genuinely scared. Folks who know me well will probably pick it up, but I'm scared. Who's snoring? Seriously?
Not me.
I think he's had a busy day.
He has had a busy day.
Been a big barbecue.
Not me. Not me.
Start throwing things at you, Daz. And I needed that because I was scared when I recorded this. What I'm not saying in this video is that they had a landslide inside, another one, and the flooding had basically filled all the sumps back up. So all the work that they'd done over the previous week, pumping water out, had been knocked out. So at this point, sump 1 is flooded. So they were basically starting from scratch, starting back at the entrance, trying to clear the water out as much as possible. We also had a discussion overnight because it was like, are these guys really in the cave? 2 weeks earlier, we had the alarm raised that people were stuck in the cave by a miner who'd come out and said there's people stuck in the cave. We'd heard quite a few different rumours that potentially 3 people came out because there is a jail term associated with illegal mining in Laos. There was a strong suspicion that one of these guys put his hand up to take the rap to say, hey, we were there, and the other 2 would kind of run off and hidden into the jungle. We were assured by the locals that that wasn't the case, that, you know, there were still 2 wives sitting at the cave entrance crying, waiting for their husbands to come home. So the information that we had was quite limited. We didn't know what the story was. We knew that the situation here at the cave site was deteriorating, not just inside the cave, but actually the camp itself. Huge amounts of rubbish, huge amounts of equipment failures, lots of things were starting to stack up. We'd had a peak in risk with rescuing that first guy, that Benz and Miko bringing out the first guy. And now we were starting to see the risk climb back up again. We were starting to see things start to compound. And so I was scared. I was feeling reasonably confident walking in that morning. By the time I got to the actual cave entrance itself and got the update, I was scared. One of the hardest things to do in a situation like this is wait, because there's nothing we could do. We're there as divers, and the first sump was too tight to dive through safely, so we had to wait for it to be pumped out. We were there to support further through, so we had to wait. Some of us wait better than others, so I'm not having a good time. Some of the guys were quite comfortable having a good snooze, but I was tense. Robin Cuesta, like me, doesn't wait well. Now, Robin has experience analysing GIS data, analysing a lot of the geology data that we had. And Robin basically, with Benz, went through and identified on the satellite imagery where they suspected the cave went. And there was a suspicion, given the geology that we had, there might actually be vertical chambers. There might be vertical access tubes dropping down through the mountain that would provide a shortcut. If these guys were talking about large air chambers that were further into the cave, maybe they could be accessed by one of these vertical chambers. So Robin went through, identified a path, and then he and I went up there and basically searched through these vertical tubes. We went up there with 2 guys from the Army and 1 guy from the Thai Cave Rescue Group. The 2 guys from the Army were there with AK-47s because the whole area was infested with wild boar. So you're climbing up a mountain and finding boar scat throughout the whole area, and that's why the guys were there. So yeah, we'd been told that this area had been searched. When we pushed a little bit harder, it turned out it hadn't been searched because of the concern around the boars. So I think
you said you don't like dry caving.
I don't. I fucking hate this. I really don't. But we can find a way.
At least you can breathe, like you're not.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You don't have
It's
the
nice and cool.
Yeah.
Don't have water.
the
What the
ticking.
fuck is that? So one thing that surprises a lot of people, I'm claustrophobic. So for those of you that watch my videos diving, you probably don't believe that. But if there's no water, I get panicky really fast. I really don't find caving comfortable. I don't enjoy it. This was very much a choice that I needed to do this. I had a set of skills that I could help out with, and so there was a choice to do it, to push through the fear and do it anyway. But I'm not lying. I fucking hate it. But this is what we needed to do. And about 20 minutes later, it kind of paid off.
So Robin, Cuesta, and myself and Bia, along with 2 soldiers, are actually hiking up through the jungle at the moment, trying to find holes. We're trying to find a way that will head down into the actual tunnel, head into where the guys are trapped, trying to find a shortcut from above. We've just hiked up quite a reasonable distance, and one of the soldiers has found the hole, and so I've dropped down into it. I don't know if you'll be able to see where I've come up from, just up there. But what is much more exciting is this. So that, if I had to guess, is probably about an 8 to 10 meter vertical drop. It's probably not enough to be able to hang on to be able to actually get in there, so we'll need ropes to lower ourselves down. But I can hear water below. I can hear things dripping, which is a really good sign for us that there's something down there.
So I was off by an order of magnitude. It wasn't a 10 meter drop. It was nearly a 100 meter drop. Yeah. I was dangerously close to this hole, thinking it won't be too bad. And then when we actually lowered into it the next day, it was a whole lot deeper than we thought it was.
It's just after 9 o'clock here in Laos. It has been a very big day for all of us. I'm currently hiking out. Yoshitaka not far behind me. I think a couple of the other guys are up ahead.
I'm going to skip this one. This is me essentially providing an update at the end of the day. We'd gone up into the jungle. We'd gone up, found these holes, and we're quite excited about it, to be honest with you. What I've skipped over and gotten some of my slides out of order here a little bit. I've probably missed some slides. The next day we dropped Robin down. Do any of the tradies recognise that sound? I'll give you a close-up. It's a DeWalt drill. So this is how we're getting folks lowered in and out. This is Robin coming back out. When I talked about risk profile going up higher and higher and higher, we are literally in the middle of the jungle in Central Asia, Southeast Asia, sorry, and we're dropping down 60 to 100 meter vertical tubes with folks who aren't necessarily trained on SRT and being winched back out using power drills. So this was where I was like, oh, if these guys are not in this cave and we're doing this, someone's going to get hurt.
Over.
Yeah, I'm going to stop that.
So what the focus had moved away from the cave entrance then, and
so it was
up the top.
It was split. So we had folks, I had Robin, myself, Bia, who essentially were going up the hill to try and find these entrance ways. Meanwhile, the others were hanging around closer to the entrance, hoping that the pumping would clear enough that they could get back in there and potentially push on further. I've missed out a couple of slides here that were fairly important, but that's right. Again, this is a bit of a demo presentation. The bits that I've missed was the flooding, because the first day that we went up and searched for those vertical tubes, we had a torrential downpour. We had a monsoonal downpour while I was out there. I was out in the jungle trying to make my way back. No radio communications where we were, no phone, no nothing. So I was literally running back as a messenger. Got lost in the jungle during the downpour. Managed to find a river and track my way back to the mine entrance to pass the message on that way. Slid, tore my arm open, tore my hands to pieces. It was a bit of a mess. And again, all these things were starting to back up. They're all starting to sort of go, why are we out here? At this point, we'd not seen any evidence, and to my knowledge, still haven't seen any evidence of these two other guys that were missing. There'd never been any sign of them being in the cave. the 5 guys that we'd rescued didn't know anything about the missing 2 until they came out of the cave. So there's all these questions around where are these guys, what's going on. Like I said, we dropped Robin down those holes. He couldn't even stand on the bottom. So this whole area is mostly volcanic glass. So there's basically these giant shards that are at the bottom choking up all of the tunnels. He could see ways down, but he literally couldn't even stand because it's basically knife edges pointing back up at him. So he couldn't stand on the bottom at all. There was a little bit of reporting about knocking, and I want to touch on the knocking before I play this video. It was a mistranslation. So when I went down, Wi-Fi connection apparent issue.
Why? Is it Starlink not working?
Starlink's not working.
Bloody Musk.
All right, I think we might be back online. Yep, we're back. All right, sorry for that. Apologies for folks tuning in online. This will be available later on. So this is all going to be recorded and it'll be available on YouTube. You've probably missed a couple of minutes, so I apologize for that. But yeah, the short version is things were getting pretty grim at this point, and we were very much asking the question why we were still on site. There wasn't a requirement for, but also there were other people who, yeah. I've titled this video on the presentation "Broken" because honestly, that's how I felt at this point. I didn't know what we were doing or why we were still there. We got together as a team that night, and we had a very robust conversation about what we were doing, why we were there, and what risks people were willing to continue to take. I love all of these guys, and everyone spoke respectfully, which is great, but we had some really fierce disagreements over what we were doing. Some folks wanted to push on at all costs. I was probably the loudest voice saying, we are not qualified to be doing this stuff. There are other people here who are experienced climbers, experienced pumping teams. We should not have divers here. Divers, it's great that we're supporting, but we shouldn't have divers here. I don't need to go into the other strongest voice that was coming back the other way, but at this point, essentially the team split. So a couple of us left. No hard feelings. Everyone was welcome to be involved as much as they wanted to be involved with, but it was important, I suppose, to set the example that you could leave. You needed to be able to recognise where you'd hit your limit, and pushing on beyond that risked a lot of different things. The slides that I skipped over, that I didn't include before, basically detailed where four of the cave rescue team who'd been inside the cave on the Monday night. So the first night that we were searching in the jungle, that dam broke. The dam that I talked about before that was holding the water, they were inside the cave at the time. The dam broke, they panicked, bolted for the first chamber, managed to get to the first chamber. Ben's was further inside, he was inside chamber 2. He used scuba equipment because this whole thing had flooded, used scuba equipment to dive through, to reassure them, stay here, everything will be fine. He then dived through to pass on the message because all the communications had been cut, pass on the message that the dam had broken, blah, blah. While he was on the surface, the 4 who'd been stuck in that first stump decided to risk it and try and come out. And 4 of them nearly drowned. So we resuscitated 4 of them at the cave entrance, searching a cave that we weren't sure that there were even people left inside of. It was a turning point for me. I pushed on for another day. I went up into the jungle. I helped with the search because I still thought there was an opportunity that we could get back in, but something turned with me. When that happened, it became a case of people risking their lives for folks who might not even be in the cave in the first place. So I became quite a strong vocal proponent for the idea that if you didn't need to be there, then you don't need to stay around any longer. And I kind of set the example by trying to say, you guys can leave. Some folks decided to stay on. They only stayed it another couple of days before they had a significant collapse, another collapse inside the cave, and the authorities made the decision that it needed to be closed to everybody. So I take my hat off to the guys who stayed behind, but I recognise that I didn't have anything further to offer. I didn't have the right skills to do this. So they didn't give me a helicopter on the way out. Some of the guys did get a helicopter on the way out a few days later, but I took the long way home. It was pretty rough, and this is very, very rural. So 7 hours of this back to Vientiane. It did.
Hi folks, just a really quick message to say that I'm on my way out of Laos. The team came together, had a big meeting last night, and we had quite a robust discussion around what we were doing here. And some of the folks who have come out to support are going to continue on, but the decision was made to really conclude diving operations. And as a result of that, I don't feel like my skills are up to the task of continuing to contribute to the search. So folks are continuing on. I was invited here as a diver to provide support in that form. And so making the decision now that there are other folks who are far more qualified and far more suited to things like this, who are already on site contributing to participate. So rather than hanging around and being a spectator, I'm being bustled back to the capital, and I'll be on my way back to Adelaide very soon.
I did get 24 hours in Vientiane once I got back to the capital. Gave me a chance to wash all my gear because it was filthy, and Aquis would have had an absolute heart attack if I turned up at the border with all this stuff coated in mud. As it was, I had to tick the whole, have I been in fresh water? Have I been in like farm areas? All that sort of stuff. And I'm like, yes. I ended up binning a lot of my clothes because there was no way it was going to get back. Like, I just simply couldn't bring a lot of stuff back. So I think the pants that I wore for the entire week, the shoes that I wore for the entire week, all of them got binned. I think I came back to Australia in flip-flops. Like, yeah, there was nothing. So this is flying out of Vientiane. To this point, getting on board that aircraft was what it probably needed to be. I was leaving an active rescue site. So there were concerns about whether or not I would be allowed to leave, whether or not I would get through immigration. As it was, it worked out. I did get locked in the hotel for a little while. I did have a taxi driver lock me inside the taxi as well. And then, yeah, there was concerns about actually getting through the gate, but I managed to get on board the aircraft, and from there, things got a lot easier. I took this on the right-hand side. This is the flight from Sydney to Adelaide. I hadn't eaten anything really in the time since I'd gone. I was just strung out, just absolutely and utterly shattered. On the Qantas flight back from Sydney to Adelaide, they served a breakfast burrito. I cried. Like I knew I was almost back. Yeah, it was very stressful. But I knew I was almost home. So I landed back, Channel 7, Channel 10, ABC were waiting for me at the terminal. And yeah, so I had to debrief essentially with them, give them their last little pound of flesh. Channel 7 in particular, I don't have a lot of time. I don't watch them, but I will shout out to the Adelaide crew. They made me getting to Laos possible. I was so pinched for time that being able to get in a car, race down, pack my gear and get back and be able to take critical equipment with me that would help the guys made a big difference. So yeah, the two guys from Channel 7 and Noel Brunning, the news anchor that I've met over in WA, made that possible. So I'm always going to be very grateful to those guys. So it's just ticked over an hour. I again apologise to our folks online. I know we did lose you there for a little while, and apparently issues. You can thank Mount Gambier for that. Connected to Starlink apparently, but I'm now hotspotting my phone, so God knows what's going on. But I apologise for the connection issues. Like I said, you will be able to watch this back if you've missed anything a little bit later on. So before I go to questions online, does anyone have any questions here?
Yes, I asked you earlier, what goes through your mind, because you can't plan this dive, and we all know how important planning is. You can't plan it because you don't know what's in there. I don't know how mentally you get in the water and do that dive.
For me, again, if you didn't hear that online, how do you prepare for something like this? You kind of can't. All you can do is you can help as best you can. That you can do whatever it is you need to do. That for me, it really boiled down to the trust that I had with Miko. Miko knew me. We had dived together. He knew what I was capable of. He knew my dimensions, and he believed that I could be of assistance. So I had to trust that he had invited me to help because he knew me. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have a good sketch of what this place looked like. You just had to go with it. You just had to take each bit of it. It's why communication became such a big issue, because if you head into somewhere and someone else heads in at the same time, you're in trouble. But sometimes you just had to send it. Sometimes you just had to trust it and go. I guess each of us have to weigh up our risk profile and what we're comfortable with. I reached a point where I was no longer comfortable with the risks involved and stepped back. Other people were more comfortable or more accepting of those risks than I was. But at the end of the day, I've been diving 30 years. Like I started young. I won't show you the photo of me scuba diving in the bath. But I started young. I'm a diver at heart. I was being asked to cave to then use my diving skills at the far end. When I was no longer there to use my diving skills at the far end is when I started to ask why I was there at all. So I'll take whatever, but if I don't have a really clear reason on why I'm here or what I'm being used for, then I'm less willing to take those risks to push on. So scared senseless, honestly. I think I said to you, Helen, before, I started having nightmares the night that I got the invite. Like I started having nightmares in Perth, and they continued for a solid week after this whole event. Like when I was back in Australia, I was still waking up having nightmares of claustrophobia.
I'm gonna say, was that getting stuck, or was that not achieving?
I'm claustrophobic. Like I was waking up like from nightmares of being trapped, of being stuck. Like,
but the places that you've been.
So I'll share this.
That you've been in.
I'll share this for folks online as well. I've recognised over time that I squeeze into very, very small places underwater because I have a certainty of air supply. I trust that I can breathe. There's also a weightlessness element to it. So my biggest fear is being stuck head down in a cave where my own body weight traps me and drives me into sand, water, whatever, or being confined in that way. I'm fine with being stuck as long as I know I can breathe. And yeah, I get panicky very quickly if carbon dioxide builds up. If it starts to get a bit warm, it's why I use rebreathers, but I also don't trust rebreathers. You two are very familiar why I'm not super comfortable with rebreathers. I'll use them. They're a tool for a job. But there is a certain psychological element for me of that cool, clean air on each breath and being able to trust it. It's why I get uncomfortable in dry caves. So you can't plan for it. You just push in and try and help as best you can. And if something goes wrong, you, I suppose, go down knowing that you're trying to do something that will help other people. I'm not up for unnecessary risks if I can help. And around me believe that I can help, then yeah. I'll jump to questions in here. I did see a couple of questions early on. I'll jump back a little bit. Where did you stay? 800 mine entrance? No. So we stayed at Long Tien, which was probably about 15 minutes drive, which meant we had a coach each day, this little mini bus that they had set up for us. They drove us in and out each day. It made logistics quite challenging. Once we got from Long Tien to the base camp at the base of the mountain, if we'd left anything behind, there's no way to organise to get it back until you go back at the end of the day. So everything had to come on the bus or stay at the site. Once you were there, you either rode the tractor, rode the digger up and over, which I was not willing to do. There's a little bit of video of me on the back of it, and I was like, no, I'm going to die here. Fine with squeezing into small places, but not with dying on the back of a digger on the side of a mountain. Anyway, or you walk over, you carry your own gear. So yeah, it was 800 meters hike, but we were staying at Long Tian about 15 minutes away. So here we go. What else we got in here? What was the elapsed time from entry to first survivor release? Probably. So between me entering the cave and the first survivor coming out would have been about 4 hours. From Miko and Ben's starting the search, they had been there for 5 days. 5 days when they found them. 8 days. 8 days between when they started searching for them and when the first guy came out, and then the other 4 came out the next morning. So definitely not the guy snoring on the couch. Good on you, Daz. Again, apologies for the Wi-Fi dropping out there, folks. I hope it's okay at the moment. Do you believe the 2 other miners were in there or not? I don't know. I made a decision that I didn't believe continuing the search was worth risking the lives of the people involved. Whether or not they were in there or not kind of stopped mattering. It really boiled down to how many people's lives we were going to risk continuing a search when there wasn't any evidence that there was anyone in there. So yeah, I think I've confused interviewers, and I've confused a few people at different times where they're like, oh, what are your hopes for these missing 2? And I'm like, I don't have any hopes, and I don't have any beliefs. I've got the evidence that we're looking at. The evidence was, if they were there, if there was anything further, it would involve squeezing through an even more lethal restriction that was impossible to pass if it was flooded. So it needed to be pumped out. Inside an unstable cave that was collapsing and risking the lives of the people there as well. So you have to reach a point where you turn around and say, this is too dangerous to continue. And if they are in there, horrible way to die. I'm really sorry. So like, how many other families could potentially be impacted if those 4 hadn't survived that near drowning on that Monday night? The fact that we didn't have any rescue fatalities is a miracle in itself. So Arnold Dix was a mining engineer involved in rescuing, I think, 50 plus Indians from a mine a few years. And I spoke to Arnold when I got back. We kind of made contact and I had a chat to him. The fact that he talked about miracles. That first guy coming out was a miracle. The fact that the pumps drew the water down low enough and the other 4 could crawl out was a miracle. I didn't see much chance of there being a 3rd. There wasn't going to be a 4th. There might have been, but we couldn't keep pushing the way that we were. So I don't know. I don't believe or hope with the evidence that we had. Unfortunately, emotions have to be kind of stripped out. You have to put everything in a little box and make calls and weigh up what the risks are. So pass on the responsibility. Safe for the miners in a little trouble for their actions. That's actually a really good question. So although safe, are the miners in a lot of trouble for their actions? We don't know. Laos is an interesting country, and sometimes things get said. There's a lot of honor and face involved with things. So these guys were doing something illegal. If someone wanted to make a point out of that, then they could be in a lot of trouble. I suspect, given the attention this has received, the notoriety, how much it's brought Laos together as a country, I strongly suspect that they'll be okay. I certainly don't think they're going to be going into any mines anytime soon again. But yeah, I think they're all just very grateful to be alive. There might be consequences, but I think everyone's just really, really grateful that they're alive. So we just simply don't know. And we may never get a straight answer out of the Lao government or whatever as to whether or not these guys are in trouble for being caught illegally mining. So yeah, it's hard to know. Cool. That's the questions online, unless anyone's got any in here.
No,
No?
I've done particularly well keeping up.
Brilliant. All right. Well, in that case, I'll stop jabbering. You've all been very polite, not eating all the chicken while we've been chatting.
No pork was harmed.
No pork was harmed.
During this
Yeah. Thank you to all of you joining online. This is the first time we've done something like this, and I think we'll do it again. I think we'll do something like this again. It's really wonderful having folks join online. As I mentioned earlier on, I had just come back from a trip to Japan where we've been exploring fresh caves in Akiyoshi, and I haven't spoken about it. So it might be something that we organise a talk like this again in a couple of months' time, and I get to talk about something far more pleasant and yeah, a lot more fun. So again, thank you all for joining online. Thank you all for joining us here. It's been wonderful. I'm going to kill the live stream. But yeah, as always, follow the Soggy Wombats. You'll see plenty of updates. And yeah, dive safe, I suppose. Cheers.